A 24 female got pregnant while I was taking a gap year travelling. I met an older guy, nothing gross. I was 19, he was 23. We had fun. I was working in a bar to make money while I explored his city. When I got pregnant, he lost interest really quickly. I understood, but I'm pro-choice, and I chose not to terminate. I went home and had my son. I also made sure to get child support. He could afford it. He did fight it, though. I had to prove paternity and everything. Through that, his parents found out. They are well off. They have met my son and truly seem to love him. They provided gifts for his birthday and Christmas. They helped me with extra money so I could complete my university without going into debt. They've taken us on vacation with them so they could spend time with him. They aren't my biggest fans, but we're cordial with each other. 3 months ago, my son's father passed away. He got intoxicated at his bachelor party, tripped on the sidewalk and hit his head. And that was all she wrote. My son and I attended the funeral. We spent a week in that city so his grandparents could see him. They approached me with an offer. They had no other children or grandchildren. Their son was only 28, so he had lots of time to provide them legitimate kids. They didn't say this, I'm just assuming, so they never thought about my son's name. They said that if I changed his surname to theirs legally, they would make him their primary heir. I think this is dumb. He's their only grandchild and they would deny him an inheritance because of his last name. I said I would consider it, to be polite, and I've left it at that. I actually have a pretty good life as it is. My family has been very supportive, and because of the whole court thing, my son's father had to have life insurance with him as the beneficiary. Would it be nice for my kid to get a big sum of money? Yes. Do I want him to have the surname of a man who didn't want him, see him, or love him? No. I've been talking to my family about it, and a few of them think I'm being an idiot for giving up this kind of money for my son. It's generational wealth, and I'm making the decision based on emotion. I think they're idiots for thinking money is the only thing that matters. I think I'll tell my son's grandparents that they can talk to him about it when he's 16. He'll be old enough to understand the implications, but young enough not to be tied professionally to his last name. You are the idiot. He's not likely to forgive you when he finds out what he's missed out on. And for just a surname. Yeah, his dad didn't want him, but his grandparents wanted to involve him as primary heir. This is a grand move on their part and could change your son's life. Does the decision have to be made now? If she leaves the decision to her son and he decides to do it as a teen, would the grandparents say, "Nope, too late, no inheritance for you. You should have changed your name X years ago"? Fortunately, OP says they're fine, and money is not everything. OP's not the idiot. They're the idiots for tying money to a name. If they want him to have it, they should give it to them regardless of the last name. I'm curious about what other strings that money will have. You're playing chicken with the grandparents' longevity then. What happens if the grandparents pass away before your son becomes a teen and can decide? He could lose a very generous inheritance because of the resentment of his father. Screw that, dude. That money is your child's future, and it's not giving him the last name of a man who didn't want him. It's giving him the last name of his grandparents who did love him and want him and provide for him and his mother's life in very meaningful ways. I mean, helping with paying for your schooling. That's way more than even most parents would do for their adult kids, let alone a basic stranger. Why is everybody assuming that somebody willing to make this kind of demand will just leave it at that? If OP gives in from now until they die, they can hold the will over her head and threaten to change it if they don't get their way. Honestly, if somebody can't respect something as basic as the name I chose to give my child, I question whether they should even be in contact with them. This is controlling behavior, and totally misogynistic. I have to wonder, would the grandparents be putting forward the same proposal if OP had a daughter? Would they pressure a granddaughter to adopt and keep the family name as she married, or even to hyphenate it? Or would they just view it as the end of the line and accept it? I think OP has the right answer. We have 3 kids, pre-tween, tween and teen. This year we decided I would go back to work and everything has been going well. We have 3 babysitters, a cousin, a friend's daughter and sometimes my son. I want to clarify that he volunteered to babysit sometimes and we paid him. We paid $20 an hour, so $10 per kid. It's easy, fast money he can make. This year he's babysat about 15 times. If he doesn't want to, we just get one of the other babysitters. Now the problem is that I came home early when he was supposed to be babysitting and he wasn't there. When he came home, we learned he'd been leaving and coming back before we did to collect the cash. He also got the kids to lie. I'm extremely angry. So he can't pay us back since it's over $1,000 that he doesn't have. So he has to at least babysit for free 10 times to make up the money or get a job and pay it all back. He was angry but chose the babysitting. We will be randomly checking in with him during it. He went to my aunt about this and now we're getting a ton of calls. They all think we're being idiots to him and have called us some creative names. Am I the idiot for forcing my son to babysit for free at least 10 times? Not the idiot, but I think you should have forced him to get a job instead of babysitting for free. It doesn't sound like he's a very good babysitter and you have the 2 younger kids to consider. Don't prioritize his punishment over their needs. I wouldn't trust him with anything responsible. Then there is the spite part. He could do the bare minimum, resulting in something bad happening. Yeah, your son essentially stole from you by taking payment for services that were not actually rendered. Plus, he put his young siblings in danger by leaving them alone. What if an emergency occurred that they were too young to handle? Everyone's the idiot. What your teen did is clearly serious. What baffles me the most, though, is that you seem to care more about the money he must pay back than the colossal issue that your younger ones were put at risk by lack of supervision and that your oldest thinks it was somehow okay to leave them unsupervised. Update: some of you made a really good point. He's getting a job and not babysitting. Even if we check on him, the trust isn't there. If it messes with school, he will have to deal. A lot of teenagers have jobs, and if he really tried, I'm sure it will be paid back in a couple of months. So to start this off, my son is a tween and has been begging for a family pet for a while. I finally gave in when I thought we were ready to take one on, and also when I felt he was ready for the responsibility that comes with one. I expected a dog or cat, but he really wanted a hamster. So we spent a little over a week prepping, helping him study hamster care and dedicated a sizable spot in our living room for necessities and home. We finally get around to picking one out at the pet shop. He's set on the name Sonic, but the lady ringing us up mentioned that the one he picked out was a girl and that she could get him a boy if he wanted, and he just lit up and said, "That's Amy." And that was that. We took Amy home. This was in March. My sister-in-law found out she was pregnant somewhere around that time, and last month they found out they were having a girl. Basically, they were picking out names, and one of the names they narrowed it down to had Amy as the middle name. I made a joke of something like, "Hey, we already have an Amy at our house," trying to be funny, but sister-in-law didn't think it was. I didn't think much about it at the time, but a couple of days ago she asked me to come by to talk. She started off by saying the joke I made was in bad taste. I apologized for it, and then she suggested I change the name. I told her I didn't think that would go over well with my son, and then she outright demanded it be changed, whether he likes it or not, because she wouldn't have a child share the name with a hamster. I agreed to talk it over with my son to see what he thought, and of course he didn't want to. He even thought it was cool that his cousin would share her name with his hamster. I tried convincing him to rename her Sonic even, or some other Sonic character, but he didn't want that. I explained how sister-in-law felt about this, and he felt a bit hurt because he thought he upset sister-in-law, but he didn't want to change the name and didn't understand why they couldn't just share it. I told sister-in-law that my son was set on Amy and she blew up. I'll admit I got a bit defensive and reacted poorly, but I essentially told her it wasn't a huge deal. It's not like anyone was going to make the connection, and by the time her child is old enough to know her name, Amy the hamster likely won't be around. She claimed it was embarrassing because she would always know the connection in her mind, to which I told her if it was such a strong reminder of a hamster, then maybe it wasn't a name she should use for her daughter. My brother has told me that I'm being selfish for not forcing my son to pick another name. Sister-in-law thinks I'm the idiot, and my mom has said the whole thing is childish. So, am I the idiot? It seems the name Sonic is available. Suggest she call the baby that. OP, you're not the idiot. The lifespan of a hamster is 2 to 3 years. The problem will solve itself. Amy is also the middle name. It's different from the name the child would be called by regularly. Imagine having such a terminal case of main character syndrome that you have sleepless nights over the thought of being upstaged by a hamster. Oh man, and if the kid did change it, I'd bring it up at every family gathering. Baby Amy, want to hear a funny story about when your mommy bullied your cousin into changing his hamster's name? You could have had a good hamster. Make it embarrassing for life that she pulled this stupid stunt. It's hilarious she still wants to name her kid Amy after she already associates it with a hamster. That's going to live in her brain forever if she chooses that name. A few decades from now she'll say her kid's name and will automatically get a mental picture of a hamster. Either way, I'd be buying the kid hamster-related clothing and gifts forever. Happy birthday to little Amy Jr. LOL. I'd never let the sister-in-law forget she named her kid after a cute little rodent. You are the idiot for even indulging her and talking to your kid. You gave some legitimacy to her insane request. You never put the emotions of an adult on a child. A child is not responsible for any adult's emotions or crazy damn whims. Your son should never have even been made aware of this nonsense. Sure, his aunt might eventually make a comment or something, but then you explain to him that sometimes even adults can act like kids. Instead, you put the decision on him. You put the harmony of the family in his hands. Now, he will feel responsible for the fallout because he doesn't want to rename his hamster. And what kid would? Please, go apologize to your son. Tell him his aunt's ideas and emotions aren't his fault and that you've decided no one is renaming his hamster. My son, 22, recently graduated college, and I let him move back in for free while he looked for an actual job. I don't expect any rent out of him as I want him to save up for when he moves out. He's currently a server at a safari cafe in our local zoo. Now, my son had a great work ethic in school. He graduated cum laude with a STEM, science, technology, engineering or mathematics degree, but now he doesn't. He frequently comes home upset about annoyances with his job and customers. He himself has told me that he only does enough to get by and he always comes home exhausted after a shift. He constantly complains about things that are small issues and it leaves me annoyed as it comes across as him being spoiled and entitled. He complains about his hours, which are less than 40 hours a week, complains how hot it is outside, and whines that he doesn't get a lunch break when he again works at a restaurant and isn't working a full 8-hour shift. Recently, he came home angry about another issue. He, of course, offloaded it onto me and told me that his manager scheduled him for 12 days straight starting after his next day off. This apparently compensated for a few servers returning to college and his restaurant being short-staffed. I told him to look at the bright side. He'd be making overtime on his next check and he would get more tables, which means he would get more tips. He told me that he wanted his weekends. I reminded him that all he does on his weekends is sit in his room playing his PlayStation and that he's better off making more money. I told him that he was acting like a spoiled brat who was afraid of doing some extra work and that when I was in the military I sometimes worked 16-hour shifts for 4 weeks straight with no days off, and 12 days isn't that long. He told me that he still didn't want to and that he was likely going to speak to his manager about it the next time he was there. I advised him against it, and he said he just didn't want to work for 12 days straight. I told him he doesn't work, he just has a job. He takes orders and brings out food. Sure, it's hot outside and he has to walk a bit, but he's not doing any actual work, and he can call it work when he has a serious job. But for now, he's better off just going to his job and raking in a little extra money to walk back and forth from tables and talk to people. He decided he didn't have anything to say back and stormed off. The next day, his older sister called me to tell me that I should apologize. Apparently he was hurt by what I said, and she felt I owed him an apology and that I was wrong to minimize his feelings. I told her that he's a grown man, and he can approach me and demand an apology if he so chooses, but if he can't defend his laziness, I won't be apologizing. Am I the idiot? I told him that he doesn't work, he just has a job. LOL, what? He's dealing with rude customers and bratty kids in the hot summer sun. That's work. It's not a career that we want, but it's a job. You are the idiot, and you owe him an apology. When I was in the military, I sometimes worked 16-hour shifts for 4 weeks straight. Tell me more about walking uphill to school in the snow, Grandpa. Seriously, he doesn't like his job. It's not what he went to school for. I can tell that from here. OP, a huge idiot. 12 shifts straight as a server is brutal. A lot of states don't allow that. OP's son has every right to talk to his manager. Sir, go get a job in food service or customer service and tell us if it is or isn't working. If your son is trading labor for money, then he works. If you think it's so easy, why don't you help out by going and applying for a vacant server position? Then he won't have to work 12 days in a row, and since it's not working, you won't mind just letting him have your paycheck and tips, right? People like you infuriate me, to be honest. You look down on people working jobs you feel are beneath you or them and make them feel like crap because of your bias. Your son deserves better, and you should grow up. I, 18 male, was taking my little brother to the swimming pool. We saw this couple, looked late 30s, early 40s, panicking by the poolside. Then I saw what they were looking at. A kid was drowning and they were screaming in panic. Now, I've seen my girlfriend, 18, jump in to save a kid. She's an excellent swimmer, one of the best in our school. She told me afterward that if I ever found myself in that situation, I should just throw a flotation device and get a lifeguard. So that's what I did. I tossed the kid my brother's kickboard and then ran for a lifeguard who promptly rescued the kid. The kid thanked both me and the guard, but his dad was upset and asked, "Why didn't you just jump in yourself? He could have died while you were getting the lifeguard." That upset me, and I said, "Hey, at least I did something instead of nothing." The parents got really upset and said I don't understand how terrified they were and that they were paralyzed, that I had no idea what being so afraid felt like. Was I the idiot? LMAO. Sorry I didn't save your son's life to your particular standards. What a clown. Not the idiot, and you did exactly the right thing. And good job assessing your girlfriends and your actual ability realistically like that, not letting your masculine impulse get you in trouble. The first rule of helping in emergencies is not to create more casualties. If you're not competent to rescue, do not attempt rescue. Lots of cases of parents drowning to try to save a child. So if you weren't a good enough swimmer to rescue someone, and you need to keep in mind that a person who is drowning will try to drown you in a panic as you try to rescue them. So being able to swim pretty well isn't enough, then doing what you did is the best option. Good for you for not panicking and for remembering good advice for what to do in an emergency. I did the training to become a lifeguard. The very first thing you're taught on what to do when someone is drowning is to throw them something they can grab and float with at them. You only go out and grab them after they're unconscious because they will grab onto you and take you down with them. OP, you did exactly the right thing, and you have every right to complain about the parents because what they said you should have done could have caused you and the kid to drown. Panicked people are very dangerous.